Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Doctor as he travels the Vortex, and we've landed at episode 7, where we review the movie. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Glenn.
Welcome to Traveling the Vortex.
How's your week been, guys? So far, so good?
Doctor Who the movie came out. My week's been fantastic.
It is a good week
It's
in
a
Doctor
very,
Who
very good
fandom,
week.
especially for us in the North America region right now.
We both went over and watched it Tuesday nights
That's
after
right.
we got off work over at Sean's. And
Sean was the first to have his copy in hand, and he texted Keith and I and said...
he actually took a picture of it
He
with his
did.
phone and texted it to us
I
because he was so
had to
excited.
go online to Best Buy and order it, and then click in-store pickup. So, like, at 6 in the morning when I arrived at work, I'm ordering this thing and telling them, don't ship it to me. I'll go to the store and pick it up. Well, it might not be ready for an hour. That's okay. And then I went on my lunch break and picked it up, and they had it for me, and it was like... Because they were only getting 2. I wanted to make sure.
I was at Best Buy yesterday. They still had a copy.
Oh, well.
Well, you know, as we have not made a secret of, we are really the only classic Who fans in Topeka. Well, not the only ones, but really probably
seems
the only
like it, doesn't it?
diehards, yeah. Hence part of the reason we've connected and are getting the word out there.
There's got to be more out there.
I'm sure there are.
Where are they?
We're still finding them. We run across them every once in a while. You've made some connections through school.
Yes.
And I've made some connections with other people. Keith, now we've pulled him into the fold. So.
It's funny, Raina, a mutual friend of ours, I just loaned her my Matt Smith season. Well, actually, I loaned her Mel's Matt Smith season because mine's on loan to somebody else. Sarah.
Nice.
Sarah's got mine.
Sarah has yours now.
And it just kind of struck me as funny that, you know, this thing, we both bought copies of this, and they have not been on our DVD shelves for any length of time because they're on constant loan to other people going, here, you got to watch this. And so...
Well, there was a rather spirited debate on my Facebook page on one of the statuses I put between 3 of us about which Doctor was better, Eccleston, Tennant, or Smith.
Did I miss out on that?
You did.
I didn't see that.
I saw it, but I haven't chimed in yet. So.
Well, you commented, but just not on that topic.
Who's winning?
Yeah.
It was kind of a stalemate. Last
Well, I don't think I weighed in on the actual conversation.
No,
but I did make
because I put a quote up from Vincent and the Doctor, and
I put another one up from the lodger. So.
yeah. So that's pretty cool that people that I know, or other than you two,
Other than
obviously, are Doctor Who fans.
It starts with discussion, and you find them from there. So, anyway, well, speaking of bringing people into the fold and new people like Keith, one very surprising thing this week from a gal named she goes by Chrissy. She's a blogger in Utah. And she...
Hi, Chrissy.
she's... I was looking at her profile on Blogspot, and she's actually pursuing a master's in library science right now. So we wish her luck on that.
Yeah, there's a pool in the library somewhere. Be careful.
So, and she was... she did a nice little review of Traveling the Vortex, which, if you're interested in reading it, you can go to it's CJ's Notebook 5.blogspot.com. CJ's Notebook 5 is all one word. And if you are interested in reading it, we encourage you to go there, take a look. She said some very nice things about us. The gist of it is she's new to Doctor Who. She's found it recently, and she's... been, like any new fan, she's out there trying to get more information. She has subscribed to some podcasts.
Feeling very overwhelmed.
Right, very overwhelmed because she's a new fan. She I believe she said was introduced to the Doctor through Matt Smith, I believe. And she just totally absorbed his entire season. And she loved it. And fortunately, we just went through season 1 with Keith, who also was a newbie.
Season 5.
Or season 5, yeah, who's also a newbie, and got a little dose of that, gave some of our insight, and Sean and I are sharing from a classic perspective, and Keith sharing from a new perspective, and so she did a nice little piece that was very complimentary of our show, and that she enjoys the fact that there's a new person going along with her, and she felt very comfortable with us, and so we really appreciate her post. And
apparently she went back and watched some of the older stuff before she listened to the episodes where we reviewed the older stuff.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
I thought that was neat.
She's revisiting the classic series with Keith, so she's actually in line.
So we're going to be, except for the fact she's seen
eventually. So.
some other,
But so she's revisiting the classic series. She's I believe going to go back. I think she mentioned she's seen some recommendations like Genesis of the Daleks and some of the ones that you just really have to see.
Ones that we're going to get to eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. But it sounds like our Adversary Archives. She's going to be revisiting those with us, or she'll be visiting those for the first time, as Keith will, as we go back and do those. So
yeah.
Thank you very much for the kind words. It was just a joy to read your blog post, and I mean, my head swelled up a little bit because I felt like we were doing something right.
It's reaffirming that there are people out there listening.
Yeah.
There are people, and not only are they listening, they're enjoying what we're doing, and they're having a good time.
It means all the difference.
It really does.
This has been fun doing this, but it's even more fun knowing that people are listening.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you want to read her blog post and can't remember her website, we've linked it on our blog post.
Yeah.
Sean did a little entry about kind of getting the feedback and how it made him feel. So we've linked it there if you want to go check it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Highly recommend it.
Somebody else that's connected with us lately is a gentleman named Adam. He's over in the UK, and
he's from the 20 Megabyte podcast.
Yeah. If you want to visit him, it's the 20 Megabyte. 20 is a 20. The 20 Megabyte Doctor Who podcast .podbean.com is where he's located at. He does a little Doctor Who podcast himself, and I think the idea there is that it's 20 megabyte because it's not bulky. It's not a large cast. If you want to download it, it's not going to take up a lot of room on your iPod or in your MP3 player, which I thought was kind of a clever idea.
Unlike ours.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's listen to his feedback now.
Hi Keith and Sean, it's Adam here from the 20 Megabyte Doctor Who podcast. I sent you a message on Twitter to say how much I enjoyed your podcast, and you requested some feedback, so here it is. Yes, there's a lot of Doctor Who podcasts out there at the moment. I do try to listen to as many as possible, and yours was my latest edition, and I must admit, enjoyed it very much. It's nice to have some intelligent conversation about Doctor Who with as little expletives as possible, which is a breath of fresh air at the moment, because there are not a lot of Doctor Who podcasts out there that don't do a lot of swearing. And I have to say, it really was great fun, and I look forward to listening to your next episode. And keep up the great work, as they always say in Feedback Land, and I'm sure I'll be contacting you again in the near future. Cheers then, bye-bye.
So there you go.
And thank you so much, Adam, because that's just music to my ears. I don't know about you guys, but
it just blew my mind that someone would take the time to record something for us. And
first of all, the feedback's cool. The feedback coming from a fellow podcaster, somebody who's been around for the block a few times, that was cool.
Yeah,
somebody from England. That's cool.
Somebody that has a little more connection with Doctor Who, just based on geography.
Yeah,
is incredible. So now I do have to I have to point out,
Glenn's feeling a little left out.
As you noticed, he started with "Hi, Keith and Sean," and
obviously I'm the most memorable.
Well, you are.
My first thought was either A, you guys have done some correspondence with him recently, and he just happens to remember you guys or is addressing you based on the correspondence, or B, two of our voices sound enough alike that everybody thinks there's only two hosts on this show.
We did both have colds
That's
last
true.
week.
Yeah, that's very true.
And that might have been the week that it started.
I'm still getting
that might have been the reason that we sounded much alike.
I can talk in a high, squeaky Mickey Mouse voice if you like.
Yeah,
sorry, that was a really bad...
A little bit of Australian there, too.
I apologize to everybody with an accent for that. That was not cool. I'm sorry.
We won't let him do that anymore.
No.
Anyway, but I just listened to episode 41 of Adam's podcast today, as a matter of fact, and it's very enjoyable. It's a lot of fun. He started out the show with, I believe it's his daughters, and I wish I could remember their names, Isabella and I'm not going to remember the other girl's name, but they're real cute and a lot of fun, and he was giving them a hard time. And then, of course, he has another gentleman on the show as well, which now I'm going to do this guy a disservice because I can't remember his name either. But he's
For shame.
Yeah, my apologies there. But
at least you went and listened. I'm
Yeah,
a little
no.
wary for spoilers.
Yeah,
but
so Keith's been avoiding podcasts. So if you're a podcaster and you like our show, we just will mention that Keith is being a little cautious as far as what he listens to, just because he doesn't want to spoil himself along the road. So, anyway, that's feedback for this week. If you have some feedback that you guys want to, or that you want to send to the show, definitely do it. Sean's going to read our Google Voice.
I'm going to read the
number.
Google Voice number, which is 913-809-3025. And I don't know how to answer that one, but leave it, and these two guys will figure it out.
Yeah, Sean is our resident. What'd you say?
I'm a technological Neanderthal.
That's it. Sean hadn't listened to that bit of feedback until tonight when we played it because he didn't know how. Now, to be quite honest with you, and Adam knows because I sent him a response. At first, I couldn't play it.
I didn't have any problem.
I didn't realize what the format was native to until I got it into iTunes and realized, oh, wait a minute, he did this on his iPhone and found what format it was and was able to transcode it and listen to it now. So I've actually had a chance to listen to it before tonight as well. But if you want to contact us by email, it's obviously travelingthevortex@gmail.com.
Or our website, travelingthevortex.blogspot.com.
And we're also on Facebook.
And Twitter, @TravelVortex. And we're on Facebook with the new page layouts, which we were able to get a username for our site on Facebook.
An extra URL.
Yeah, so it's facebook.com/travelingthevortex.
Yeah, so
Quick,
it's a lot
easy
easier to
link.
find. Yeah. Instead of going on there and just doing the quick search, which I still find myself doing when I'm looking up even podcast sites that I visit all the time on Facebook. I'm still doing the search bar, but it's really nice that Facebook's integrated it so that we actually have a direct URL.
Well, and we can send it to people who don't have Facebook,
Right.
and they can look at our
Right.
Facebook page or
redirect them from somewhere else, to Facebook. Even if they are a Facebook listener, it sure makes it a lot easier. Or reader, it sure does make it a lot easier.
There are people out there without Facebook?
I guess so.
We
I
have
don't
two
know.
friends that are.
Well, that's true.
Moving along, though, this week, the at least the day this week came that Sean and I have been waiting for many years. We've actually been waiting this since May 14th of 1996, when it was first transmitted on the air on the Fox network. Doctor Who the movie, as we mentioned earlier, came out for the first time, Region 1 format, available to everybody in North America after some legal wranglings, I believe, or some litigation issues with Universal as to who was going to release this thing. But the BBC prevailed, and so we finally got our copies, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Well,
a two-disc special edition came
absolutely.
out.
Let's delve into it with Keith starting us off.
All right, here's the plot of this. The Doctor is returning home to Gallifrey with the remains of his arch-nemesis, the Master. Forced off course, the TARDIS arrives in San Francisco, conveniently, on New Year's Eve, 1999, where the Doctor is critically wounded in a gangland gun battle. At the local hospital, Dr. Grace Holloway fights and fails to save his life. Later, in the morgue, the Doctor wakes up a new man. But he's not the only one. The Master has found himself a new body. As the clock counts down to the start of the new millennium, can the Doctor stop his oldest enemy from destroying all life on Earth?
That sounded just a little bit snarky there.
It was a bit snarky.
I'm not going to lie. That was kind of snarky. What's up with that?
What? That he conveniently landed on
San
Francisco?
That's what I want to know. So why did he conveniently land in something? You added conveniently. Now, I can understand conveniently New Year's Eve of 1999 because it deals with time.
Look, it's San Francisco. It's America.
I see. Conveniently because this was the first American broadcast of a new Doctor Who.
That and the fact he just conveniently was over Earth instead of some other planet, which kept the production costs down.
I suppose that's true as well. I suppose. Okay, I'll give you the conveniently in that case. Well, let's start with Keith because he's the newbie, and of course, Sean and I have seen this film before.
While I was snarky with the description, overall, I enjoyed the movie. It was a lot of fun to watch. A little surprising to see Eric Roberts in Doctor Who. That did throw me for a little bit of a loop. And aside from the Doctor, it was very interesting movie because it's so American as opposed to everything else Doctor I've seen. This is the most American I've seen. So that was a little strange. It almost didn't feel like I was watching Doctor Who because of that aspect of it. But I really enjoyed Paul McGann as the Doctor. I thought he did a really good job. Eric Roberts did a pretty good job as the Master. Although I still don't understand why the Master is a snake, a liquid snake. But
neither do we.
Overall, I enjoyed it. I liked the design of the TARDIS. I thought it was very steampunk, and it did feel a lot like new series TARDIS.
Yeah, I would agree. In fact, I think that probably, and I think maybe Russell T. Davies has said the same thing, is that I think maybe that was some of the inspiration, at least of the the TARDIS console room being so much wider and so much bigger. I think that there must have been a correlation between that as well.
You could tell it did have a bit more of a budget than most other Doctor Who stuff, just because of all the different places they go and how big the console room is, and the fact that they built that giant eye, which I didn't fully understand either.
Neither do we.
At least the things I didn't understand, no one does.
Yeah, there's some pieces in there that I think even Doctor Who fans could honestly say they were a bit perplexed as to why some of the elements that are in there.
I can retcon all of it.
You're not.
Of course you can.
You're not perplexed from the standpoint of the fact that you understand that Fox had a hand in this, getting this movie made. Universal had a hand in getting this movie made. Amblin had a hand in getting this movie made. There were a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and there were a lot of cooks that were stirring the pot. And I think that we're lucky we got what we did. And I truly just even, we'll get to some of the DVD extras in a little bit, but I think you can really, really credit, and I'm going to forget this woman's name, Jo Wright. With the BBC.
For the BBC.
I think you can credit her a lot for having the BBC's interests and really steering this. Now, Philip Segal, who was the executive producer, the main guy that really got this rolling, being a Doctor Who fan himself, I think was a credit to this movie being very Doctor Who. But I think Jo Wright was also probably a solid foundation on getting a lot of the original ideals to stay in there, because the BBC had a protected interest in this to get this movie greenlighted, and I really credit her as well as Segal for making sure that this still felt like a Doctor Who film, because I mean it really could have been something else if you go back and watch the extras.
Really, when they were on the streets of San Francisco, it wouldn't have surprised me if a Ninja Turtle popped up, because of the grimy feel of the city just made me think of Ninja Turtles, and the music in the background. I don't know why, but something about, especially the beginning when he lands on Earth, and the acting of some of the actors just made, I don't know, maybe I'm just crazy, but it made me...
Maybe because they probably had the same production budget. I don't
know. But the dark, grimy city of it, I don't know, it was just... I was expecting to see Michelangelo pop out of the sewer.
Okay, I'll take that for what it is. Well, I'm going to ask you, and Sean and I will give our feelings on this film too, but I'm really curious from your perspective, because I really felt like Sean and I got a chance to watch this one through your eyes, because we've seen it ourselves through our eyes as classic fans, and so it was, at least for me, was another perspective to watch it, having watched some classic, having watched a lot of new. Just seeing it through your eyes was interesting to me. This was the first time you were introduced to another Doctor. Actually, you got two doctors this time, but you actually got introduced to a classic Doctor, and being number 7, played by Sylvester McCoy.
He did John Pertwee.
That's what I'm saying. This is the first This is another one.
Oh, another.
I didn't
Okay,
say
another.
first. I meant this is
Another.
the first time
Another.
he gets introduced to another doctor
And
besides
this is
Pertwee
the
and
first
Davison.
actual regeneration I've seen,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
true.
Yeah, that's true.
which I thought the
Well,
regeneration was very
yeah.
interesting.
They don't all look like that.
No, they don't. They're all quite different. They all span different times.
And I found the not so much the amnesia part cheesy, because that makes sense. And they explain that well. But the whole scene where he's in the abandoned part of the hospital and it's raining and he's, "Who am I?" I was like, oh, that was a cringeworthy moment for me. But I did, from what little of what I saw of the previous Doctor and
Sylvester McCoy.
I enjoyed what I saw of him. And I understand all the strife that comes with McCoy. But I kind of liked him. I mean, I don't have much to base on because he wasn't in the movie for very long, but...
Well, I don't know where to go from here. I mean, Sean, maybe give it just some of your take on the movie. I mean, you and I are going to come at this at a different perspective because this was a different Doctor Who for us as well, but it was more of the same at the same time. But go ahead, what do you think of it?
I love this movie. I was frustrating initially when I remember sitting down to watch this night of in May of 1996. I mean, I heard this was coming, and I'd heard all the rumors. Spielberg's making Doctor Who. They're bringing it back, blah, blah, blah. Seriously? Really? And I didn't put much stock or faith in any of it until I started seeing ads. And there it was in my TV guide. You know, the full-page black and white print. Doctor Who, the movie. I was like, oh, okay. And so it started off, and we had this kind of weird quasi-opening with the Master being executed on Skaro. Makes no sense. And it didn't quite look like Doctor Who, and I didn't recognize the voiceover narration because it was Paul McGann. I hadn't seen him yet. And then the title comes up, and to me it was new. I didn't realize until much, 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 much later that the font of the Doctor Who movie logo is the old John Pertwee font. Mm-hmm. Didn't make that connection at all.
No,
So
I didn't back in the day.
it's shiny, but it's the same thing. So here's this new font, and the Doctor Who theme comes up, but it's not the Doctor Who theme. It's this big orchestral
It is the Doctor Who
string
thing,
section.
but it's just very alien.
Yeah, it's not the same.
Well, even for me watching it, it sounded very off.
I mean, it's pretty. It's
it
undeniably
just didn't
beautiful
sound like Doctor
version
Who.
of the theme. It just didn't sound right. And then the names start coming up, and we're in the Vortex, but not really. And I was really not there until the TARDIS showed up. And the minute the TARDIS came spinning towards me, I was like, okay, everything's going to be all right, because they haven't changed that. And there was Sylvester McCoy. And, you know, it went from there, and I loved the console room. There were elements to it that just seemed a little, the wooden toggles and the panels, and some of that seemed a little bit off. But it worked. Everything in there worked. I liked the look of it. I liked the style of it. I liked the giant beams. This was the first time we'd seen the Time Rotor with a top and a bottom, which obviously we've seen a lot of in the new, whereas in the classic series it was just the bottom part that went up and down. Design-wise, everything in this worked. And then we land, and he gets shot, which is horrible, and then Paul McGann shows up, and I really liked Paul McGann. It was just, I was instantly taken with him. And from that point, I really didn't care. They had me at hello, you might say. Once we got past that initial, I'm not sure of this, everything else they did in the movie, that's a fairly simplistic story. I mean, we're in time, and there's a regeneration, and everything goes from there. But it works. For what it was, it works. And what I think is really interesting, everybody's main complaint seems to be how Americanized it is. And there's no denying there are elements of that. I mean, the car chase, the streets of San Francisco feel to, although it's actually Vancouver, which I didn't know.
Really?
I didn't know until I watched
it was shot in British Columbia.
But that, I don't know, maybe Ninja Turtles was shot there too, so that might explain that. But it does. There are definite Americanized moments. But at the same time, they worked so hard to point out how British this was. That we open with Sylvester McCoy eating jelly babies, which he'd never done. But, as a throwback to Tom Baker. And then Paul McGann carries jelly babies.
And Patrick Troughton as well, because the second Doctor was the first one.
Did he?
Yeah.
I didn't
Second
know
Doctor
that.
was the first Doctor. Now, I didn't know that at the time because growing up, it was Tom Baker that was the Jelly Baby Doctor to me. And then later learned, in fact, I think I even saw something on videotape where that it's actually, the second Doctor was the first one to have the affinitive for Jelly Babies.
I did not know that. So, see, I learned something today. But, including that, and then Grace even has the line when she's talking to the cop, well, he's British. Well, yes, I suppose I am. And, just little moments sort of thing. And he's sipping tea in the tonsil room. And he's doing that. And even though they put him in the Wild Bill Hickok outfit, it looks very Edwardian or Victorian.
No, I would agree. I would agree.
Very, very much
sans
a
the
classic
hat and
Doctor.
the guns, it really does.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very classic Doctor look for the series. And in a lot of ways, I honestly think maybe that's why the show wasn't as popular as it could have been. And this sounds really weird. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I don't want a bastardized American version of Doctor Who. That would be wrong.
Which it sounds like it could have been.
And it very easily could have been. But I almost think that they put in what they felt they needed, but then took everything else and really reverted it hardcore back to make it British and English and proper. And I think maybe that almost backfired. I think maybe that's why some of the audience was lost. And interesting.
See, I don't know about that. I was somewhat lost during some of it because I don't think if they were trying to hook new viewers, I don't think they did a very good job of explaining things, exactly who the Doctor is and who the Master is. I mean, there was the opening narration, but and how all the lives works, stuff like that. I don't think they did a good enough job explaining.
The audio commentary, there's 2 audio commentaries on here, and the one with Sylvester McCoy and Paul McGann, they actually comment on that they feel like it didn't work, and that a much better way would have been to just jump in the middle of the story and go and have this big action sequence or something with Paul McGann, and then bring Sylvester McCoy in maybe as a flashback or something like that to kind of explain the setup, as opposed to starting off with what appears to be a dodgy old guy in his living room. I mean, he's practically in a robe and bedroom slippers at that point, drinking his tea and stuff. So
reading the time machine.
Reading the time machine, which again, those are moments that I liked as a fan.
Yeah.
That I thought were cute little nods. The 900-Year Diary, the time machine, and I think there was even a previous episode where he read the time machine, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't.
We know he met H.G. Wells.
He's definitely met H.G. Wells. Had an adventure with him. No, I don't recall.
Maybe
Perhaps,
maybe I'm thinking of the.
I suppose if anybody out there knows, send us some feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. But I just, I can't fault this movie. It has faults. It definitely has moments that, and the kiss. We'll talk about that, and some other things. And there were moments where it's like, I don't know about that. But on the whole, it's so lighthearted and fun and enjoyable. It's an enjoyable outing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I just that to me goes a long way to glossing over any faults with this particular installment. And I can't say enough about Paul McGann. I'm so frustrated that we didn't get to see more. He would have been such an awesome Doctor, just from a weekly standpoint.
Yeah. Well, this being a backdoor, as they said in the making of, I think it was the 7-Year Hitch, when they were explaining how it went from an idea to fruition, and they talked about this being a backdoor pilot to the series, and that was the way they got it made, was, okay, we're going to do a movie, we'll call it a backdoor pilot, by the way that if it does become successful, then we can make a weekly series out of this. And I think I kind of agree with that concept, that if they had jumped into the story and just grabbed viewers that way and then worked it backwards, then it would have expanded on it. But I also think that at least some people thinking this was going to be a pilot for a show, I think they felt that maybe a lot of that story that they were leaving out for the viewer would be filled in later. And I think that was the idea and the reason they went this way. But, I would agree.
Well, and it again, part of the whole British feel to it is it very much feels like a classic Doctor Who story. I mean, we open and there's the Doctor and he does his bit and then something happens and he regenerates and then we get a classic regeneration tale with the amnesia and, the thing's not quite right and him kind of coming into his own, which for a first-time viewer, if you had never seen Doctor Who before, that's actually kind of a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Even with the lines that they threw in there to kind of explain things away. Oh, the amnesia, I was dead too long this time, and, this, that, and the other thing. it really, I think that's one of the reasons they have problems. Now, admittedly, and I didn't know this either, that it was up against the the series finale of Roseanne, which, if you lived in the United States, you probably heard of that show. I mean, it's kind of a big deal, and it was the last episode. Now, I didn't watch Roseanne, so I didn't matter to me one way or the other. I was watching Doctor Who, even if I had been a Roseanne fan, but I think that probably hurt it just a little bit.
One of the things that I found really interesting is the beginning and the end, with him in the TARDIS, sitting in the chair, reading. Where everything else I've seen of the TARDIS, it is a much quicker process to travel. Almost more instantaneous than a literal spaceship going like it was that we saw at the beginning. I found that really strange.
Yeah, I don't know. This is probably me retconning something like that, but it almost does seem like the trips are instantaneous for traveling even great distances. But I think also the Doctor, if he just popped from place to place to place, he wouldn't have any downtime. So I suppose you could kind of say maybe that's
he's taking
a time. He's
Okay.
taking his time getting to his destination because there's no imminent threat, at least that he knows of at that time. He thinks the Master's remains are just remains at that point. He doesn't, understand the implications of taking these remains and the life essence of the Master still being, able to move.
There may also be a emotional content to that as well, since they were at the Academy together. They do have that almost friends status, even though they're,
Or maybe brothers.
or maybe brothers.
That's something we'll revisit later, but
But wouldn't that make the Master? No, I'm not going to go there. So, okay, let's go there. Wouldn't that make him half human as well, or fourth human?
well, I don't know if you listen.
I guess it's
to
the same father.
If you listen to the 7-Year Hitch, they kind of give you glimmers, and I think there's books out there that have chronicled this as well, and kind of have maybe drawn from that Bible they created to create a backstory for the movie. But the way I understand it is Ulysses, who purported it to be the Doctor's father, was probably the Master's father as well, but they had different mothers, so he wouldn't necessarily have to be half human, which we're obviously going to talk
be half
about
something
here.
else.
He could be half snake.
Yeah. That says a lot about their dad.
I'm going to delve in here now because I was in the same boat as you when I saw that this was coming back. In fact, you were the first one I think that told me about that.
I think I was,
and you called me up, and we weren't even working together. I don't think at that time you were still working at Suncoast. I was working at Duncan's, and you called me and said, "Hey, did you hear Doctor Who is coming back to TV? It's going to be on this week." And I was like, "This is incredible!" The first time I ever heard of it. It was not pre-internet, but that was back in the days when the internet wasn't.
Al Gore hadn't invented it yet.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't something that you were readily on all the time and hearing these rumors and making these connections. Especially as we've talked, being out here in the Midwest, it's very dry as far as Doctor Who goes. So when you called me and said, "Hey, this is going to be on," the first thing that I did is either that night or the following morning, I went down and bought. I went to the magazine. I think I went to Hastings here in town when they have the huge magazine rack, and I found a Starlog. And Starlog had an article on Doctor Who the movie being released. And I bought that and kind of, I must have read that article 4 or 5 times, and it was really very non-descriptive as to what the movie was going to be about or what was going to happen, but it introduced you to Paul McGann. It kind of told you about his backstory. At that time I knew that Eric Roberts was going to be the Master because, based on this article, reading that. So I remember being so stoked because even though I hadn't dropped off as a Doctor Who fan before the Wilderness Years in '89 when it went on hiatus, I still was excited because it was new Who, something that I had been sort of pining for. I think even at that point I had been borrowing some cassettes from you,
I think,
and was getting back into it. Was just rediscovering Doctor Who again, and to see that there was a chance that this would be a American. Or at least on, Doctor Who on the American airwaves was just exciting to me, and I totally loved it. Had to work the night that it aired, So I had to record it, and I remember locking up the video store just maybe also slightly earlier than I probably should have, and rushing home to my apartment, which was only about 7 blocks away, and walking right in, and my roommates, trying to talk to me, and I was like, leave me alone, I've got to watch Doctor Who. So I popped this thing in, and I watched it, and it was a different experience for me, because I didn't start it and go, well, this doesn't feel quite right. This was, the narration. I'd never heard this voice before, because of course it's Paul McGann. We haven't been introduced to this doctor yet, but I hear this narration, and he's talking about things that I just knew and loved from the classic series. He's talking. We get mention of the Master. We get mention of Skaro. We get mention of the Daleks. We get mention of. I mean, it was just all of this was being thrown at me, and just all these memories kept coming back of all these Doctor Who that I grew up with and loved. And then when the graphic comes up, I too didn't realize that was the Pertwee era graphic, maybe just tweaked a bit, but same format, same font and everything. Just that coming up was it screamed Doctor Who to me. I mean, it was just exactly what I wanted. And when the orchestra comes up and plays, it was, yes, that's the Doctor Who theme. It's alien, but that's it.
Yeah.
And it felt like a movie. It was like, it wasn't that, which I absolutely love the electronic sound of the series. I think that's iconic, and I think that it needed that, and it was perfect with that. But to hear it as this full-backed orchestrational piece was just incredible. I mean, it felt so movie. It felt so grand and big, and I just remember being so excited about that. And I was then not let down to see Sylvester McCoy as him, playing the Seventh Doctor, sitting there reading this book, having his tea. I just remember being so elated that this was Doctor Who. This is exactly what this needs to be. And it just, again, from Hello, but maybe even a little earlier, maybe from the H in Hello, it had me from that point on. And I just enjoyed it with its flaws and everything. I mean, there were moments that, there was cringe moments for me, and one particularly is when the half-human element comes up. But I never really had that much of a problem with it. I think, in hindsight, and now, listening to other fans review and critique the film, I kind of see the point of view of a half-human doctor, how it doesn't work, it's never been explored before. But I think that at the time I thought, well, that's intriguing. That's not a bad idea. This is something that they're going to explore. This might be interesting. I remember kind of thinking that. I've probably waned on that opinion since, but just that, I think the kiss was quite surprising for me, because we never before had seen a romantic interest on screen. I mean, clearly, the last time I can remember, and I hadn't remembered up until that time, but now going back and revisiting Doctor Who's, the Aztecs is the only time on screen I can remember there ever being any sort of, at least flirtation or some development of romance, and that was William Hartnell's Doctor at the time. So it had at least been that long since it had been attempted, and now, revisiting that as well, it was just still weird, because I had never seen anything like that, and so that was a bit weird. And then Eric Roberts, of course, playing the Master. The first time I saw it, I just felt that was the only thing to me that was just too American. It was just, but now this might be me retconning it as well. But going back and on several viewings later, it works for me, and it works for me because the Doctor has stolen an American body. He's
the Master.
Yeah, or not the Doctor. Yeah, the Master has stolen a American's body, and so I just think some of those those personalities and obviously the speech and the voice and things like that are going to come through, and so it almost works because Eric Roberts takes the Master and does kind of mastery type things. So it's almost like the essence or the embodiment of the Master is there. Just happens to be an American, in an American. And so he's having to deal with having an American body, with American personalities and American memories and things like that. And so
I think
it
Eric
actually
Roberts
works for me now.
I think he takes a lot of guff for Eric Roberts is Trevor, blah blah blah. I thought he did okay. I really there are moments where I really enjoy the Eric Roberts interpretation of the Master, because you're right. It's very, the Master's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that exchange in the front of the ambulance when they're chasing, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a great exchange between the two of them.
And it was very Master-like humor. Because the Master's dark, but he's not above having a good time. Because he's, psycho.
Yeah.
But the Master he always had an element of fun to him. He was never the cold, heartless villain. I think we had the Daleks for that. There I go putting that R in there again. But he was. I don't have a problem with Eric Roberts. I know a lot of people do. I thought he was good.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it. And I thought Daphne Ashbrook was fantastic as a companion, although she never travels in the TARDIS. I mean, she's obviously clearly on the TARDIS.
No, she does. She goes into temporal orbit.
Oh, that's true. Okay, so we can consider
Whatever
her.
that is.
We can consider her traveling. Well, temporal orbit. I just get the impression is that time between. Clearly, the TARDIS has to go back in time. What do you say? A minute or second or whatever, and just before the events happen to cancel out what happens. And I think temporal orbit is that time that between it traveling to that point and the point that it has to land. Yeah, I think that would be considered temporal orbit. I mean, if everything is no longer going to exist because the Eye of Harmony is going to suck it in and totally erase everything in existence, the temporal orbit can just happen at any length or time or rate or anything within its own.
And the question then becomes, why doesn't he do this every week?
Well,
why can't he
that's
just
true,
fix it?
and that's probably a flaw that I recognize now. But back when I first saw this film, I just glossed over all of that because I think I was so in awe with the fact that Doctor Who was on the airwaves again, that there was a potential that this was going to become a new running series again, and I loved it all the way through.
What might have been.
Now going back and rewatching,
it was on Fox, so
well, yeah,
it would have gotten canceled.
I think they would have done a crossover with The Simpsons. I mean,
if it would have stuck around long enough, they probably would have tried to do a crossover with Firefly.
Of course, now
that would have been the coolest thing ever.
We're reviewing not only our love of the Doctor Who movie, but I think we also have to talk about some of the things that now, having seen it at least a number of times myself.
All right, now that we've given it the fanboy interpretation, let's get to the nitty gritty. What didn't work?
The Master being tried on Skaro by the Daleks. Don't have so much a problem with that, other than when have the Daleks ever tried anybody?
What is a Dalek court like? Guilty, bam, done.
And of quote,
exterminate.
Of quote, a list of evil crimes.
Yeah. Do you know how long they would have had to have been there?
Well, not to mention the perspective of the most evil race in the galaxy or the universe.
That just tells you how evil those crimes were, now doesn't it?
Trying somebody for a list of evil crimes.
The pot calling the kettle black.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and what's interesting, they never actually say Dalek. They never, in that opening narration, we talk about it, it's on Skaro, he was tried for his crimes, blah, blah. Now, when the disintegration happens, you hear exterminate, and it's very Dalek-ish voices. Obviously,
maybe the Daleks were just the executioners.
That could be. I don't know how that would work either.
Maybe it was a Gallifrey.
All right, so if that's the apology for all of that,
maybe the Shadow Proclamation.
Why would the Doctor's mortal enemies, who are always trying to exterminate the Doctor, request that the Doctor take these remains back to Gallifrey?
The Master made the request.
Why would they grant the request and just let the Doctor go? Hey, here are the remains. Get out of here before we zap you. I mean, it just doesn't work for me. It was a way to shoehorn the Daleks into the movie, without having the Daleks in the movie. I think is the answer to that question.
Yeah, well,
but I just have a problem with that. The Eye of Harmony on the TARDIS.
Now, see, I want to get your impression on this. Give me yours, because I've heard a lot of people complain. Why is the Eye of Harmony in a TARDIS? I'm not complaining. Why is it there?
I feel the necessity to retcon it, though.
I never, ever got the impression that this was the Eye of Harmony located in the physical center.
Well, we know where the Eye of Harmony is. Yeah. It's on Gallifrey. We saw it in Deadly Assassin.
This, to me, I felt was like a link to, or a wormhole to, that this is where the TARDISes get their power from the Eye of Harmony, and that they have this...
And they make reference to that that's where the TARDIS, that's the heart of the TARDIS. that all of the Tardises,
Tardises.
Tardi.
That's Tardises, I think.
Is it Tardises?
I think it's
okay.
Tardises.
All of the Tardises get their power from the Eye of Harmony, and this is just a spoke in the wheel.
See, I never got the impression that it was the end-all, be-all Eye of Harmony.
Okay.
But I've heard other fans just complain about, oh, it's wrong because it's in the TARDIS and it shouldn't be there and it's this, and it's like, dude, it's a black hole. They're not going to physically put it in there. It's just...
That fixes something that also I had brought. That a human retinal scan opens the Eye of Harmony. Okay.
Well, that's why
Now, if this is the Eye of Harmony, why is it a human retinal scan that retinal? Okay,
Retinal.
that could have easily been something else. Retinal scan open the Eye of Harmony. If this is the Eye of Harmony, but if this is just the Doctor's link to the Eye of Harmony,
why would it still be a human?
if we accept the fact that he is half human, it explains why it has to be a human retinal scan in order to open it on this end. And the Doctor clearly says
Rassilon was half human.
Oh, don't go there. Let's not even go there. Yeah, you don't bother sending feedback if you're listening to this on that comment.
Well,
unless you like the idea.
Interestingly enough, there is a small but very, very
there is some fan
fanatical.
fiction.
No, it's not fan fiction. There's a very fanatical base of people who believe Rassilon is the Doctor. That he's actually much older than he gives himself credit for. And that's one of the reasons why he finally left. That he'd created the system and wasn't it all great and grand, and it went to crap, and he just said, you know what, I'm done with this, and took off. And he left the legend of Rassilon, and we're getting way beyond what you're ready for at this point, I'm sorry. But
I think I've heard that theory.
And I don't know that I don't know that I put any stock in it. It's kind of an interesting idea.
It's an interesting idea. It doesn't work once you get to End of Time, and it doesn't work in the Five Doctors, and it doesn't
unless
work.
that was a previous regeneration.
Well.
I
think dead is dead, though.
Yeah,
you can't just leave.
Well, no, but
ghost
the Master is dead.
He,
at the end of this, first of all, at the beginning of this,
the Master's been dead several times.
He's blown up.
In science fiction, dead is never dead.
Dead is never dead. Thank you, Spock, for establishing that. But, the Master's dead at the beginning of this. He comes back, and then he's digested by the TARDIS. He's gone. Oh, but not really. We can bring him back. We have the power. We can rebuild him.
One of the things I do
don't
like.
want to spend a lot of money.
One of the things I do like, and I think probably some people had some problems with this, is that the Doctor needs an beryllium atomic clock, and he has to find one in order to. That was to close the eye, correct? Yeah, I believe that's right.
No, that was the timing malfunction.
Oh, that's right. So that he could go back in time. Yeah. Okay. All right, so he has to find this thing, and I thought that was cool, that it has to be an atomic clock. They've got one that's going to be the most accurate clock, that's ever been made. And I really like the fact that when they get there, she's like, how are we going to get this thing back to the TARDIS? And he says, well, we only need a piece of it, and it happens to be the integrated circuit chip, which I thought was very cool. I thought, it's this big clock that he's looking for, and he only needs this little piece out of it. So, I mean, that was a lot of fun. I think people have pointed out issues with that. I don't. That was actually one of the highlights of it. I like the choosing to do this on December 1999, December 31st of 1999. Everybody had the big fear, and this is 96. That this movie comes out. 99, is the ideal end of the world that we're not going to see. Yeah, 2000. Well, Y2K comes later, happens. I don't think that was even forecast by then. But there was always this implication, even from the Prince song, party over, out of time. That 2000 was going to be the end of the world as we know it, and so it was neat to see them place a story. Not the first time they've placed a story in December 31st of 1999, but. Neat that they placed it there and used the Millennium as a focal point of the show. So I really enjoyed that. This is kind of backtracking here, but I don't know why, other than for exhibition or symbolism, the Master's life force or life essence or whatever has to be a snake. It was kind of a funny thing that Keith brought it up and said, "Why is it a snake?" And Sean and I said, We don't know.
No, I think one of you said it's because he's evil.
Because he's
that's
evil.
what Sean said. Sean said because he's evil. That was as good of explanation as anything.
And that really ties into. There's apparently a very thin sublayer of religious overtone to this film that people have brought up, especially the scene where the doctor's in the burned out hospital wing or whatever it is, and he falls down and he's in the shroud. Well, prone, with his arms outstretched, and he looks very Christ-like.
Well, I think even...
And you've got the Master, who starts off as a snake. I mean, there's a lot of...
I think even to the point where he comes out of the morgue freezer, out of the locker.
I love that scene.
He knocks the door down, he comes stumbling out, and he's got the shroud around him. And it's very, rising from the dead. Yeah, resurrection, coming out of the tomb.
Stone away from the
exactly.
Tomb, and there he is.
So there's a bit of an alliteration there as well.
Although I guess I shouldn't have complained about the snake when I... Spoiler alert, except a smoke monster.
And Lost, yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose that's...
And their explanation for the smoke monster. I'm not saying it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, and I accepted that. I should be able to accept the life force being the shape
now,
of a snake.
everybody that's been associated with the show has really denied the Christ implication.
Yeah.
No, that wasn't what we intended. But I think it's interesting that maybe subconsciously it was there.
It rises to the level. Yeah, it rises to that.
I always view those things as... I'm going to borrow this from a podcast I listen to, Are You Serious?, when he talks about people seeing racist things in movies nowadays. It's like what Yoda says in Empire Strikes Back, when Luke is going to go into that cave, and he says, "What's in there? Only what you take with you." And I think that applies to so many movies, that if you go into the movie looking for those religious overtones or undertones, you're going to find them. I think that's...
Well, and let me expand on that, because I don't think Sean went into it...
No, I'm not saying that
with
he
a
did,
Christ,
but
Satan...
Some of the things he read online, those people might have been.
But here's what happens is, Sean knows the story of the Garden of Eden. Sean knows the story of the resurrection from the Bible. So Sean goes in to a movie with already those seeded, and sees those symbolisms in a movie and directly connects them. So I think that I would agree. It's whatever you take with you. It's not that Sean did that or I did that on a
purposeful level.
Yeah, I think but on a subconscious level, your mind puts it together, and you say, "Oh, I see this."
As a writer, I mean,
absolutely.
when you're dealing with themes of good and evil, and I don't think, at least in Doctor Who, I don't think you can get any more good and evil than the Doctor and the Master. That's, well, maybe the Daleks, but that's pretty much it. The Doctor chooses to do good. The Master chooses to do evil. The Daleks are kind of their own little... they just hate everybody.
I think you're right.
But you've got that. And so now we've got this wonderful exposition with them both being reborn. The Master taking over Bruce's body as the paramedic, and the Doctor regenerating in the morgue.
Which we see those things happening at the same
and
time.
Yeah,
they
intercutting between them.
Yeah.
They're cutting back and forth. And my hat's off to the director... I just had his name. Where did it go? Jeffrey Sachs.
Yeah.
My hat's off to you, sir, because it's a gorgeous film. It's a gorgeous-looking film. But I loved all those little touches that you added to that. The inclusion of the Frankenstein scene. I thought that was really cool.
The fact that he was watching.
I mean, it was a little heavy-handed, but I don't care.
Yeah.
It was really cool to see that. But then to intersplice that with the Master taking over and doing this stuff, and you do have that good and evil. And I don't know if the writer intended to do it or not. He claims he didn't. But again, subconsciously, you're dealing with good and evil. Garden of Eden.
Mm-hmm.
That's just it. And maybe the special effects people, they got the script and it said the Master is a blob and he crawls across the floor. And somebody in the special effects department said, "Well, that's got to be a snake."
Yeah.
We can do that. That
well,
look kind of cool.
Even at one point where it comes up and strikes. And
yeah.
Because, it just...
it very much could have been.
So who knows?
That's what we could do.
And then the director watched it and went, "Oh, yeah, that's kind of cool. A snake. Yeah, all right." And it just went from there.
Now, I was doing some research, and I didn't delve into this too much, so I can't give you the explanation, but apparently the Master taking the form of a snake, his life force or life essence taking the form of a snake, is actually explained in a book called The Eight Doctors, which was done after this. I think Terrence Dix wrote it. Was done after, and they actually explain it away. So I'd be interested. I'd get a copy of it, but if you go online, then the books are like $100 because apparently it's out of print and it's real hard to get. But
interestingly enough, my own research, not on this matter, but just linked to it, that same explanation is then thrown out by a Big Finish audio production that happens later.
Oh, is that right?
So they've got two different competing theories for exactly why this snake-like entity would I mean, they tried to sci-fi it up, which I appreciate, but at the same time, neither one of them worked. And then both of those get shot down by the reemergence of the Master in the new series, even though we don't know exactly how that happened.
Well, it is said in Sound of Drums, the Doctor says that the Time Lords resurrected the Master.
Right.
We don't know how they resurrected him, but they resurrected the Master. So we know how he was brought back, and somehow he's plucked out of the Eye of Harmony, which that even works now that when we talked about how the Eye of Harmony portal on the TARDIS is connected to the Eye of Harmony on Gallifrey, that if the Master is pulled into the Eye of Harmony there, ultimately he's going to end up at the source. Yeah. So the Time Lords would have
access.
Yeah, would have an access point.
To the TARDIS.
I suppose we should clarify that's a theory of mine.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That we both happen to subscribe to. That may not. It's never been explained. No. That's how that works. But when, I don't remember, I think it was the Five Doctors where they mentioned that Rassilon harnessed the power of the Eye of Harmony, that he basically lassoed this black hole and forced it into orbit around Gallifrey.
Actually, I think it was even the Three Doctors.
Maybe it was the Three Doctors that talk about that.
They bring, Omega is the villain in that as well. So, yeah. No.
I mean, anybody that can do that,
Rassilon and Omega were working on the project.
Yeah, anybody that can do that, I'm not going to question that he can have a conduit to it in each of the ships.
No, absolutely.
I'm going to let that fly. So
no, that works. That works. The last thing I wrote down here, because I think it needs to be talked about, and we've kind of alluded to it before, is what do you think of the half-human aspect of the Doctor?
Initially, I was very much, why? No, don't go there. Because it really felt like we're going to pull Mr. Spock with him. We've gone Star Trek with it, and ever since Spock, which was a great concept. I don't want to dog that at all. But ever since Spock, every science fiction show has had to have a half somebody.
And every science fiction show has raised somebody from the dead.
And then they brought somebody back from the dead. Thanks a lot, Spock. You just had to go and, it felt a little cheap. It felt used. It felt used. Yeah. It felt like a cop-out. Going back, I really don't have a problem with it. Yeah. One way, it explains a lot about the Doctor's affinity for Earth. Yeah, it explains a lot about his feelings toward humanity and why, especially during the David Tennant years, why he champions himself as Earth's protector so much. So, I mean, you can explain it away in either case. In fact, we were even talking about the fact that because of how that sequence initially pans out, where the Doctor makes the statement, "I'm half human on my mother's side."
Let me delve into that. Let me delve into that because I felt necessary. I really have never had that much of a struggle with the fact that he would be half human. I've never really delved into that. But listening to all of the different fans in the community talk about how that just doesn't work, they don't like it. So, as we watched the movie this time, I forced myself to retcon. I was trying to do the fans a favor, and I forced myself to retcon this half-human element. And of course, at the one point when they're looking at what they think is, whether they're looking through the Doctor's eye, we've got Lee and the Master, and they're on the TARDIS, and they're seeing the Eighth Doctor and Grace in the park across from her street. And at one point, we see the shot of the eye that they're looking at. And the Master makes the reference to, do you see that? That's a human retinal of the eye, shot of the eye. And that's when he makes the comment, the Doctor is half human. It's like it was a revelation to him. Aha, the Doctor's half human. I retconned it in the sense that we were seeing through the Doctor's eyes. And at that point, he's either just kissed Grace Holloway or is very near her face, and I said, "Oh well, we're seeing Grace's eye. That's why." The Master is mistaken. It's really her eye he sees, and he's drawn the conclusion that the Doctor is half human. So I retconned that. I said, "Okay, the Master is just mistaken." So as we go on later, there's then that infamous comment where the Doctor tells Grace, "Can I tell you a secret?" And she says, "Yes. What is it?" And of course, they're interrupted by the professor at the the institute, the scientific institute, comes up to talk to Grace because she's clearly, obviously she said she's on the board, and to kind of sidetrack him, Grace says, "Oh, the doctor was just about to tell us something." And he reaches over and he says, "I'm half human on my mother's side." Well, he's telling the professor this, and it's almost just an offhanded comment. And it's really a ruse because he's telling him something that doesn't matter what it is in order to steal the badge so that he can get closer to the clock. So that's the doctor. As we know before, the doctor lies. So that's the doctor just lying, just throwing something out there that's just, off the top of his head in order for a different purpose, and that's to steal the badge. Fixed. The doctor just lied. He needed something to come up with, so he just makes a kind of comical comment, because in the way that he says it, I'm half human. Well, on my mother's side. I mean, it's almost funny. Just, you say,
and saying that to a human who doesn't
I'm
know that you're
Irish
an alien.
on my mother's side.
Yeah,
Exactly. And so it was whimsical. And I said, okay, I just retconned it. We're good. I fixed both of them. And then both of you guys come back and say, well, then why did they need the human retinal scan to open the Eye of Harmony? That's the reason the eye opened, because the doctor's half human. And I went, oh no. So I'm still trying to work that one out. And I promise I will come up with something.
Unless a Gallifreyan eye and a human eye have similar composition.
If that were the case, wouldn't the master be able to open the Eye of Harmony? Although at that point, he's got the snake eyes at that point. So
well, yeah,
that's one reason he's not going to open that silly thing.
Yeah, he's in a human body and he can't do it.
Exactly. That was my thought too. Well, wait a minute. There's just issues with that. We'll have to think about that. Maybe it'll be some of our homework. Maybe we'll try and figure out a way to retcon it for the Doctor Who community, especially those who are... I'm sure if we went out there and looked, there are retcons and theories out there.
Oh,
and that would be interesting to go see how some other people have tried to rationalize.
I've got a retcon and a theory.
Okay.
He's half human.
You're more willing to accept that because you don't have as much invested in Doctor Who.
Here's another one. Since when did Doctor Who ever make sense? From the technical standpoint that we're trying to continuity something, this show, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. That's all you got to say to explain that.
That's safe. I would agree that there are a lot of inconsistencies, and I think that fans tend to pick their battles when it comes to the things that need consistency. We talked about the regeneration, that cap. I think off
you and I
last
talked
week,
about that.
We're gonna, I think we'll visit that at one point as well as we're talking.
Oh, I
about
can't wait to
Doctor
open
Who.
that can of worms. I really can't.
But there are just certain things that fans need to have an explanation for, and there's some things that fans can just skirt right on over. So
I want to touch briefly on the kiss.
Yeah, let's do.
This was a big deal at the time. It was the first
passionate,
real passionate, and let's be honest, Daphne Ashbrook,
very attractive
lady, and a wonderful performance in this. So I imagine it was very easy to kiss her. I don't know, but I'm living vicariously through his lips. But at the time, it was just like, oh, he kissed a girl. I mean, it was just unheard of. And going back, again, everything's easier to accept going back, especially now with the new show.
Yeah.
Because the Doctor kisses everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think now that we've explored the Doctor having a relationship with Rose to some point, and it's okay. We're not going to give a lot away by saying that, but they've certainly flirted with that and done more with that in the new series. And going back, it's almost tame now, don't you think?
I very much so.
It's not as impassioned and it's not as romantic once you see the relationship develop with the Doctor later and a companion. So
I think it's in many ways it's twofold, because you can explain it away. You can retcon it by saying, well, he just figured out who he was.
Yeah.
The key
he was excited.
The memory lock just bing. So you can explain that first one away. Okay, no problem. But then she says, kiss me again, and he does. And it's like, wow, okay, now wait a minute. And then they actually share that third one there at the end, but I think at that point, that one's almost very, very chaste.
It's a goodbye kiss.
It's a goodbye kiss. And you can almost get the impression the Doctor's really withdrawing from this. She said she's not coming with, and he's like, all right, I'll give you this, and then I'm gonna be gone. But at the time, it was so mind blowing. It was like, what? What? It's funny. I have not a problem with it now. At all.
I feel like we're leaving Keith out a lot of this because Sean and I are just we love this movie. I've never had a problem with the Doctor having a relationship. I just never ever have, even though he didn't, and then suddenly he is. It's never bothered me.
Well, he has a granddaughter. Obviously, this happened
they
at some
have
point in time.
relationships. He has a granddaughter. It's never been established that she's not his actual biological granddaughter. So he has said in the new series, "Well, I've been a father before." He alludes to all these things. So I just don't have a problem with that. Now, a lot of people want their Doctor to be asexual, and maybe from a storyline point of view, so that we don't get bogged down in a lot of the dramatics and the
so it doesn't
things
turn into a soap opera.
Exactly. I think that maybe it is important that we don't get bogged down in the fact that the Doctor, the love story of the Doctor. But I don't have a problem with that being an element, and I don't think it's ever gotten in the way of a good story, I guess is what I should say. So.
It's always been a side. Now, what did you think? You've seen Matt Smith.
And his
I've only relationship with Amy.
Yeah.
And Matt is very asexual.
Matt is very asexual.
11 is very asexual.
I didn't
except
really
for
have
Marilyn Monroe.
Well, yeah, he did marry Marilyn Monroe.
I didn't have a problem with it. I also, looking at taking a step back and looking at the movie, and the fact that there is a kind of romantic relationship going on between the two of them, is almost another American element added in, I think.
Yeah.
That, okay, well, let's see if we can get some girls hooked into this too. Let's make this somewhat have a romantic element to it. Mm-hmm. Let's have a big kiss. I think you can explain it away that way.
Well, it's American movie formulaic. It's an American way of saying, okay, we're going to have action, we're going to have adventure, we're going to have romance, we're going to have tragedy. There's no real. Well, there is tragedy because Grace and Lee both die.
The world ends.
Yeah, the world ends. I mean, they're resurrected with the gold fairy dust that comes out of the eye, which is okay with me because they've even revisited that in the new series that we've had kind of a quasi event as well there as well. So so that's the Americanized cookie cutter formulating a film, and they felt it was necessary to add.
This is the second act. We need a kiss.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's have a chase every 20 minutes or an action sequence, and
people. I don't know. People want to dog on the action chase. I've heard fans like, "Oh man, the motorcycle chase is terrible." Again,
no, the motorcycle chase. You know what that is? It's running through corridors. It is the grander version of running through corridors.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. And it works. It's still a Doctor Who show. It's still Doctor Who because they're not running on foot through corridors of wobbly sets, the same corridor shot at different angles. They're actually driving a motorcycle, but it's still the running down corridors element. And it fits in there as a Doctor Who
totally
element.
agree.
Yeah.
I didn't have a problem with it initially, and I was again surprised at some of the reaction that people had to it. In a way, it almost felt like people were rooting for it to fail.
Yeah,
maybe that's a weird thing to say, but it definitely had that. Oh, the Doctor Who movie, and it's got this stigma attached to it, which I really don't understand. I mean, like I said,
so
yes,
really,
there are
it's
problems,
the Phantom Menace of Doctor Who.
I think that's fair. No, I think that's a good assessment.
But Phantom Menace is deservedly where it's at in the hierarchy of that.
But it's not as bad as people make it out to be.
It's not as bad as people make it out to be.
Yes,
That'll totally.
That's what I'm saying. There are issues with Phantom Menace. There are issues with the Doctor Who movie. They both can be very fun to watch if you're in the right mindset.
But if you're in the wrong mindset, then you nitpick it and you find its flaws.
Well,
I think so.
Realistically, having just seen this, are we going to say that Doctor Who the movie is any worse than Warriors of the Deep?
No.
You know,
it's
Warriors of the Deep, great story, but there's flaws and elements.
There's flaws and elements
to
to
it.
I think the story of this is better than Warriors of the Deep, but
I don't understand why people were so keen to jump on that bandwagon of anti-movie. I think it's very unfair, and especially from the standpoint that you mentioned the wilderness years and how we'd gotten that, at least it was something.
Yeah.
There is so much of the new series in this. Going back and watching it, especially now that the new series has come out. We discussed elements of the TARDIS, the console room, and the look of the film, the ramp in the cloister room, that have obviously made the transition. The sense of fun, I think, is one of the big ones. The adventure, the excitement, the let's hit the ground and go, and a lot of what Paul McGann does as the Doctor in the last, half hour, 40 minutes of that, especially. I think that very, very much, and maybe not, maybe I'm wrong, but I think Russell T Davies took that and kind of distilled it down and said, that's what I want to go with. That's the Doctor. I mean, when he's in the park and he's sidetracked by these shoes fit so great. I mean, it's a very Doctor moment, but at the same time, we get so much of that tap dancing in the new series. The new series really, to me, feels like this. And I think it's interesting because even on the BBC website, Doctor Who the movie is listed as classic. It's classic Who. And that's because Sylvester McCoy's in it. But I almost make the argument that you could make that break beforehand. You could say this is the first kickoff of the new era.
Yeah,
I would agree. Doctor Who.
This is the bridge between the classic and the new. I think I have always said that from day one. That since day one of the new series, day one of this film, we didn't know that Doctor Who was ever going to be seen face the earth again. But I've always said from the new series on that Doctor Who the movie is really a meld between the classic series and the new series, and that the movie has a lot of inspiration for the new series in the ways that you're saying. Yeah,
very,
absolutely.
very much. Let's talk about some extras. Now, unfortunately,
I didn't get a chance to watch it.
Keith didn't get a chance to watch any of the extras. Glenn and I kind of hoarded our copies, so I feel bad about that.
Yeah,
not really.
I wouldn't have had time because I was playing Rock Band 3.
I thought you were giving. Sean was giving Keith a copy. I think Sean thought I was giving Keith a copy, but at some point. But
so I'll be over here.
Well, we'll run through them real quick because we don't want to spend too much time on it. But you listened to the audio commentaries. I'm going to let you talk a little bit about that. That's one of the few things I didn't get to was any of the audio commentaries.
There are two audio commentaries, the one by director Jeffrey Sachs, and then the second audio commentary has Paul McGann, Sylvester McCoy, and Nicholas Briggs. And that's the one I listened to. I didn't listen to the Jeffrey Sachs. I will at some point, but I really wanted to hear more of Paul McGann. And there were a few interesting stories that they shared. Most notably is that Paul McGann hadn't watched Doctor Who the movie since it premiered. So there was literally a 15-year gap between the last time he saw it and this time. And there were great moments where he sat quietly and Nicholas Briggs make the comment. He's like, "You're just going to watch this, aren't you? You're just mesmerized." And Paul McGann would interrupt with, "Why is there a snake in the ambulance?" "Well, that's this going on." "Oh, okay, I get it." Just a delight to listen to these two guys. Sylvester McCoy, they were just fun to listen to. I didn't think there were any earth-shattering stories that came out of it. Some fun ones about Eric Roberts and filming in Vancouver, and the fact that because of Vancouver's filming laws that you can only go 5 days. So frequently they would have to, they couldn't get into the bar at the hotel at the end of the week because it was full of X-Files people, which was going on simultaneously, which that was kind of a fun one. But it was a lot of fun to listen to them, and it was a lot of fun to listen to them critique this from a doctor's standpoint. And they both kind of said, this should have happened this way, or I don't understand why we did that, or oh, look at how great that set is. And I mean, and they were very complimentary to the crew in Vancouver, to the director. I want to throw a special note out to the producer, Philip Siegel, which leads into the next the documentary, The 7-Year Hitch. I had no idea. I mean, I knew this was going to be an ordeal.
Yeah.
I mean, just trying to do an American version of Doctor Who, there's got to be a huge fight to bring that to the screen. Mm-hmm. I had no idea what was involved. Yeah. And my hat is off to you, sir. Well, first of all, for doing it and sticking with it, and thank you for doing such a great service to us, the fans, by really trying to get it made because of your love and passion for it. But all of the crap that you had to go through to do it.
Well, it's interesting because you'll see pictures of him, or you'll see video of him from the early years when he, actually when it aired on television. And this is, obviously it's been 15 plus years now, but he's gray now, and that has to do with age. But I wonder how much of that gray came from.
I imagine a lot of it.
Having to deal with 7 years of getting this stuff. But what a great documentary! I thought it was a lot of it was.
That was definitely the highlight.
Yeah, I mean the majority of it's from his perspective, but he really is the one that got it where it got to, and they jump in, they talk about. They talked to was it Joe Wright, and they talked. There's a lot of people that were involved that are on this as well. But
and I enjoyed the fact that he was honest.
Yeah,
when he made the comment that the BBC had assigned Joe Wright as kind of the keeper of the flame and continuity, and that she and he butted heads right away, and he says, "I was terrible, and it was because of I wanted to do it right. I wanted to do it my way. I wanted to do it this, and I didn't want a bunch of interference." For him to be able to admit that, I just thought was really...
Well, and then Joe's very apologetic, too, because she says, she even alludes to that. She said, because he had an idea of what he wanted to do, he was very passionate about it, and that's why they didn't get along. She said that. And it was almost, very forgiving and understanding at this point. And so it was really neat to hear from both of them. And it was a neat documentary. It was put together real well. I like the... photographs kind of moving into the background.
Yeah, visually it was a really
cool.
So
that was a lot of fun.
Now, I want to get your opinion on the Doctor Strangelove.
I'm going to go here with this because, I started watching that. I think even it was one night after work. I went home and I was very tired, and I started watching that, and I thought, what the heck is this? This is just kind of bizarre. It's three fans, sitting talking about the movie. And I thought, this is just bizarre. And I fell asleep. But I was quite tired. So the next morning I got up. Okay, I'm going to give this another chance. On second viewing, probably because of the state of mind I was in now, was great. I enjoyed it. It was just sitting down listening to three people. It was the writer. In this case, it was the writer.
It was the writer of the script, and then the girl was a relatively new Who fan who had seen a lot of the current series, and I believe the other guy was a very classic.
Yeah, I could kind of.
So it was very much a dynamic like us.
Well, that was the interesting thing is I thought, well, if these guys were sitting around doing a podcast, this would be exactly what it was. But it was interesting. I have to say that I really liked the gal, and she was spot on because she brought up 2 points that I brought up while we were watching the movie. Number one was, Grace, don't go to the opera if you're on call. I said that when I was in the movie.
Yeah.
And the other thing I said was, this guy takes all the furniture, but he leaves his shoes. And she says the same thing, and I said, "Oh, we're kindred spirits here. This gal and I have got it on here, going on here."
I had two different moments with her that I was on the same wavelength. She makes the comment that she loves the end of the movie because Grace makes the comment, "I know who I am, and that's enough." And it's a very affirming moment for Grace to have that. And then she makes the comment, of course, you've lost your job and the guy moved out of the house and you have no furniture. So, you're going to be begging on the streets when the doctor visits you again. But, that's okay, And I laughed because I thought that was really funny. And then the other moment was the clock. She says, my absolute favorite bit is when the professor goes, "What do you mean it won't start?" And they pan up to the balcony, and the guy in the lab goes like, "I don't know." And he just shrugs. And she cracks up. She says, "I have a degree in physics for this, that, and she says, I'm sorry. Rule 1 on the checklist is check apparatus." And all he did was remove a little bit from it. And you're going on. And you would think that they would go to it and go, "Oh, look, there was a piece missing." They slid the door open. Look, what do we get? Shrug.
Yeah, I like that, too.
I cracked up. She had me in stitches. I also really liked their analysis of the end, of what might have been. Mm-hmm. When they make the comment, when you get the three of them, when you get the doctor and Grace and Lee in the console room.
The Asian child.
The Asian child. When they're in the console room, he says that's really the first time that it felt like Doctor Who. The Doctor is back. He's got his memory. He's got his stuff, and now he's got companions. And seeing the three of them standing near the console, you really felt like, I'm ready. Let's go. When's the next episode?
Yeah, let's go up.
And it was very sad that we didn't get that because I agree with him. I think that would have been a really fun group to hang out with in the TARDIS.
Right. Yeah,
and it saddened me in a way that, in a lot of ways that we didn't get it, but. The potential was there, and the series that would have been.
Of course, we had the standard photo gallery. which is just some pictures from the making of and whatnot. Music tracks, which I listen to a little bit of. PDF materials, which you go on, and of course they've got radio time stuff. And second disc, there was behind the scenes, which is just takes behind the scenes, and you see him getting makeup put on. It was real generic, but okay. I'm just soaking up every little bit of this as I'm watching it, so I loved it anyway. The EPK, or the electronic press kit, as we call it, or EPK as we call them in the biz, was a documentary with interview segments from 1996, and this clearly was the entertainment press kit that they sent to news organizations and news magazines and TV shows to run clips, because it's actually got what's called B-roll snippets, which is just snippets from the documentary that they do on this. I think it's about a 3-minute documentary or 5-minute documentary. Oh, it's a 15-minute documentary. But then they give you the B-roll clips of the interviews as well. They give you Philip Seagal's tour of the TARDIS, which is just him going around describing the things on the set, which was kind of fun, but it just had this 1996 feel. It didn't have a modern feel. So I was a little disappointed that there was more newer stuff, but there's not a lot you can get now, 16 years after the movie.
A set.
Yeah, exactly. And they did that with the 7-Year Hitch. That was the new material, was how they put this thing together over the course of 7 years.
It kills me to think that set doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It really hurts.
The other one I didn't watch was the Who Peter, and I'm going to go back and watch that.
I didn't watch that one.
As everybody knows, Blue Peter has had a connection for many years with Doctor Who.
As everybody knows.
Let me explain a little bit about Glenn. Glenn is a true Brit-phile.
I am an Anglophile.
An Anglophile, pardon me. He enjoys British comedies and TV shows and children's programs.
I think he hasn't seen Misfits.
I think he owns all of the Teletubbies, if I'm not mistaken. But so we're like, what the heck is Blue Peter? And so Glenn had to come in and explain this to both Keith and I, and we're like, serious? Okay.
It's cool what Blue Peter did and keeping Doctor Who alive, but
yeah.
I don't think there's any way most standard viewers would know about.
No, and that's
Blue
probably
Peter,
true. And by
unless they're over in England.
I think a lot of
I just love your British arrogance, as everybody knows.
He just needs an accent when he says it.
As everybody knows.
I do the accent
British
for
accent.
you, but I've been forbidden.
So I haven't watched that actually yet, so I plan to do that. But then, of course, there's some other the visual effects tags. The Wilderness Years, which talks about 89 to 96, and
which is another one I felt was an interesting documentary. And
it really
wasn't
was
quite as
extensive.
Well, it was fairly extensive. I don't know that it was quite as entertaining as I was hoping. It was a little dry.
It wasn't quite the 7-Year Hitch, but it was just really a movement of how Doctor Who ended on TV and how the BBC really kind of shunned it and pushed it aside, and how McCoy's era had been so frowned upon that they didn't want anything to do with Doctor Who for a while. So it was interesting. It was just.
It dealt a lot about the books and the magazine, which were still in production during that time.
Right, and the elements that kept Doctor Who still in the mind of fans at the very least. And the
one tidbit that I took out of that I thought was very, very interesting, that the book publisher the Doctor Who novels that were coming out, is that they didn't want to have a group of writers writing these, that they went out and looked for people who were submitting first novels and different things like that that could submit to this. And the names that popped up on these:
Mark Gatiss,
Russell T. Davies. And I was like, seriously? I didn't know. I knew they were fans, but I didn't realize that they had that kind of connection.
And these are guys that are actually writing Doctor Who episodes now. So
I figured when you said Russell T. Davies.
Yeah,
that was a big one. The Strict for Action one was, I thought,
it was kind of
cool.
that.
It was about Doctor Who comics.
Yeah, it makes me want to go back and farm some of the Paul McGann era now and find some of the strips and read some of those, because it looks like a lot of fun. I actually have a couple of Doctor Who magazines from somewhere in between 96 and 2005. Clearly, when the run was still going in, there is actually, I didn't realize this until I went back and thumbed through them, that they are actually Paul McGann strips. Now, neither one of them are, right, yeah, exactly.
As with most things here in the Midwest. Hey, look, I got Doctor Who magazine issue 147 and 962.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but I'm excited now to go back and read through those, even though I won't have the whole story because they are serialized.
Yeah.
They do continue from one.
Well, I thought
to
that was
another,
interesting too, is because I've read a handful of Doctor Who comics, which I think we've got probably material for a whole other podcast at some point. But just the idea that they took and went with a very structured, we're going to do this and really make a run of them, and that they were sequential, and that they weren't just episode of the week kind of deals, that they had an overall story. I thought that was really cool for as long as that strip ran.
Yeah.
So,
well, they had that going. They had the one in Doctor Who magazine running. At the same time, they had another strip running in the Radio Times, and so they had, running alongside each other and doing different things with them, but still staying in the realm of the Eighth Doctor.
That's and both Paul McGann.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, I thought it was just almost sad that they almost got the blessing to do the regeneration into 9, and it was all set to go, and we were going to see the regenerate. We would have possibly seen the regeneration of 8 into 9, and the BBC stepped in and said, "We can't show the Doctor. We can't show 9 before 9 is on TV, and we can't show 8 in the comic strips after 9 is on TV." So there's a conundrum there where they couldn't show the regeneration because of the fact that they had these two circumstances that collided with each other. And that was really interesting. It's almost sad that we don't see a regeneration, except they did a reprint, or it wasn't a reprint, I think it was reprints. I think they put it together in a graphic novel compilation, and we're actually able to explore that. So
that's cool.
Yeah, I think there is a... Now, I like to believe that regeneration may not have happened the way they went, because I like to believe that the regeneration was a result of the Time War myself, and that we will see Paul McGann hopefully come back at some point. Whether we see him regenerate into 9 or not, I don't think we'll ever get that.
Yeah.
But I like the idea that the Doctor went on, the 8th Doctor, where that strip ends, there's even more Doctor tales out there that involve the Time War. That's just me, my wishful thinking. But
I certainly hope so. The other one that I thought was interesting, it was very, very dry, the Tomorrow's Times.
Yeah.
Did you watch that one?
I did.
It was a collection of what British newspapers said about Doctor Who the movie at the time that it aired, and they just read little clips and different things like that. Pretty much universal acclaim for Paul McGann.
Yeah.
Everybody enjoyed his interpretation of the Doctor, and wished that would go on. Everybody lambasted the Americanized product. I mean, yeah, we've got a lot of money, but it's Doctor Who, and you're not doing it right. And the thing that I thought was very interesting was after these are the same, when the guy said these are the same papers that really drove Doctor Who from the airwaves. These are the same people that were like, this show is childish and it's immature and it looks horrible and it has no place as being part of the great English empire. These are the people that are now coming back, going, we need to rescue Doctor Who from the Americans.
Pat on the back, yeah, exactly.
and bring our show home.
That's a British institution that should be home. Yeah,
I thought that was really
interesting too.
And how proprietary. He said they felt very, very proprietary, that Doctor Who was an English institution and it needed to be made here, and it was a matter of pride and nationalism. And I thought that was really interesting, because I thought to myself, how would I feel if, say, for example, Star Trek got remade over in England? We're going to do Star Trek, but we're going to do an English version. It kind of put me in that fanboy state of, I don't know how I'd feel about that. Now, maybe Star Trek's a bad example because it's continuing on. But if you were to take something that we enjoyed, that we would remember fondly from.
There are so few things that we didn't steal from another country.
Well, that's true. I mean, right now it's.
Well, there's so few things we haven't stolen from the UK.
Yeah.
I mean, everything is retried.
Television
here.
Right now is littered with that. But I just if you could find something from our past that was so well remembered by us, and then find out that somebody else was remaking it and maybe done what we thought was a botched job, would we have that same kind of we need to bring this home? And I thought it was really, for being a dry documentary and just a little short one, I thought it was kind of cool.
Well, being the Anglophile that I am, I think the Brits could do it better.
The Brits normally do all their TV shows better.
They do their TV shows
I suppose
better.
it depends on what it was.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could see, like Sesame Street maybe would not be a good one.
Although I think they have their version of Sesame Street.
I'm sure they do.
Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for us. I think we've exhausted our time here, but
no, I could talk about the
well,
movie
I could too. I could too, but poor Keith, he's about to fall asleep over here. So, and And we apologize, Chrissy, you didn't get a lot from Keith this week, but hopefully you enjoyed.
Oh, I didn't get to watch the bonus features, so
That's right, and maybe if you get to see them this week, maybe we'll just
we can
do
touch
a
on them
little
real quick.
brief, synopsis from you on those.
So what did you think overall as a DVD?
It's great. It's like I said, I was disappointed that we got just electronic press material for that. But what else are you going to do? Where are you going to get that information from 15 plus years later?
I want interviews with Spielberg.
Yeah.
I
mean that would have been fun. But I thought To Entertain did a fantastic job with the disc. I thought the movie looks great. I mean, it really does. It's not been up converted to HD or anything, but it looks great. It's the
overall quality
of it. It was remastered clearly. Looked good, sounds good. I thought all the extras that they did put on here were fun. The other thing that I didn't get to was the Easter egg. I hear there's an Easter egg on here. I didn't find it.
I know what we're doing next.
You need to start. In fact, we'll go out and pop this in as soon as we're done.
We will.
But there's an Easter egg on one of the two discs, and I neglected. I actually went looking for it on one of the discs, so I know which disc it's not on, but didn't get around to checking the other disc. Or we're going to do that next. But To Entertain is doing a fantastic job now with the DVDs. I'm so glad that they're doing it, and they have done a stellar job again with this one, and they've included a lot of information. I mean, they go above and beyond. This one maybe has a lot more to farm from it, because it's the only Eighth Doctor, so you've got all of that strip for action to do.
Right.
It does have the benefit of having electronic press kits from Fox that they were able to get a hold of and use on here. So it probably is easier for To Entertain to put this disc together, but they really did a good job. And I think for what I paid for it's more than worth what I paid.
I wonder if the licensing was a problem on the special features end. I mean, once you've cleared all the legal wrangling for we want to issue this disc this way with this, do you then have to go, well, we want to put a documentary on it? Oh, that's a whole new set of fees we have to talk about.
No, I don't think so.
Surely that was all part and parcel negotiated.
I think especially since most of this is done from To Entertain. The only thing included on here that is would have been outside of that is the Fox EPK, but those EPKs they're like trailers from years ago. You can't use clips of a movie in any production you put out, but you can use clips from a trailer because a trailer is public domain.
At that point.
And I'm sure these EPKs are public domain as soon as they go out as well. I don't know that for sure, but I don't think any of that had to be cleared through Universal or Fox. So. Maybe difficult, I don't know, but I mean this movie actually released in the UK on DVD in I believe 2001 the first time. Now it didn't have all the gimmicks and all the special stuff until it was then again re-released last year in October. Right. And this is the version we've got now in the United States is the re-release special edition that came out in the UK in October. So, and it's been we're real fortunate now to just be not very far behind the DVD schedule over here that they have over there. So as soon as something's released there, we look forward to it 3 months.
I thought it was a little fun too. The one bit they said where it was actually it aired on Fox, and then it aired
in the UK.
UK the next day. I wrote we were first on. I didn't even think of that at the time.
Here's the thing: it actually aired first in Canada. It aired May 12th of '96 in Canada, and then it aired May 14th in the United States. And then aired not until the 27th in the UK.
Wow.
So 15 days later. Which, is just interesting that they went that route with it.
Since we just talked about
that's a Fox thing.
Oh, yeah. It would have to be. But I just thought it was interesting since we talked about getting stuff day and date and BBC America and showing Doctor Who.
But North America was
we
the first
were first
to
for
get
that one. So.
The movie. So. Anyway, I think that's going to wrap it up for us. That'll do it for another episode of Traveling the Vortex. Again, if you want to contact us, drop us a line, travelingthevortex@gmail.com. You can visit the Blogspot site. It's travelingthevortex.blogspot.com. Also our Google Voice number.
Which is 913-809-3025.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Travel Vortex, and
Facebook.
our URL on Facebook.
Traveling the Vortex. Facebook.com/Traveling the Vortex, and we are all individually on Twitter also.
Yeah.
So you can find us that way too.
And if you want to send us, voice feedback, typed feedback, video feedback, send it along. We may have kind of tough time getting your video on a podcast. But
Chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah,
we'll take that.
anything you guys want to send us, we'll take. Now, really, any kind of feedback that you guys want, whether it's a critique of the show, whether good or bad, let us know how we're doing. We want to hear from you. So,
I suppose that's an important thing.
And your critique of Doctor Who the movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'd love to
hear
get
what
your
you
thoughts
think.
out there. We talked about pats on the back and how enjoyable it is to get those. Even if it's not so good feedback, even if it's quote unquote negative feedback, I really don't believe in negative feedback.
No,
I believe if you guys have an issue with something that we're doing, or I didn't really like the fact that you did this, tell us, because obviously we're not going to know to correct it unless we hear those kinds of things. So by all means, but and then next week we've got.
Oh, yeah, next week. And of course, I think we discussed this a little bit on last week's episode, but we're going to, we did decide to extend the poll for our adversary, what did we say? Archives. Adversary Archives. I think originally, Sean posted that we were called, that Glenn called it Adversary Archives, and we were going with that, and that was cool. And then I remembered, I think I said Adversary Chronicles. But I like Archives better.
Yeah.
So the A's go together well.
I remembered it wrong.
No, I'm glad you did, because I like it better. So we're going to do our next Adversary Archives on the Autons. Oh, another A. Anyway, the reason we did that, we extended the poll, which I think you can still vote on Travel the Vortex, blogspot.com, to find out who you think that we should go back and revisit.
There's a two-way tie, or a three-way.
There's a three-way tie now.
A three-way tie right now, so even if we wanted to, we couldn't in the poll because we need a winner.
We need somebody to,
But we decided to throw the Autons, which the Autons are not part of that poll.
That's correct.
Because Keith skipped ahead.
Since I went ahead and watched
and
the first
went back.
Christopher Eccleston.
We've decided that we're going to go back and review Eccleston's era next because it's one Doctor again. It's very easy to manage.
And we're going to do that in 2-episode chunks for the show. I'm going to watch... Well, I've already watched the first one.
We haven't ironed that out yet.
But
either way. But
we're going to watch
Keith
the
has seen
Autons
Rose, which is an Autons episode. So we thought, what better time to now go back and revisit the Auton episodes from the classic series.
And I'll probably go and rewatch Rose again.
Yeah.
So we'll get some more John Pertwee for the classic fans out there.
Yeah.
We're going to do Spearhead from Space, Terror of the Autons, and then Rose, which will be the kickoff for Eccleston.
Which, technically, the last two of Matt Smith were partially Autons.
Yeah, we'll talk about those as well. So that should cover our Adversary Archives for the Autons. So listen for that next week. Well, for now, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
And thanks for listening.
Good night, everybody.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.